11 weeks, I went and had a dating ultrasound. I went to the doctor's office to find out my due date. I'm sitting inside the room. Doctor comes in, pulls out my medical chart, begins to read the screen, and stops himself and excuses him out of the room. And he's gone for quite a while. He's gone for quite some time that my medical file is up on the computer screen and I decide to take a read. And I only remember reading one word, and it said abnormality. The word abnormality is terrifying for anyone who is sitting in a doctor's office. The doctor comes back, he's got pamphlets in his hands, and he begins to tell me that they detected something in the ultrasound. And it was one of three things: either a heart condition, Down syndrome, or nothing. And then he begins to tell me that I have choices and that life would be okay if I decided to have a child with a disability. I left the doctor's office that day utterly crushed. And after a few days of obsessing, I wanted to know if it was one of those three things. So at 11 weeks pregnant, I went down to Toronto and I had a procedure called a CVS procedure. It's like a pap test with the final boss. You actually get to watch a computer screen, an ultrasound, and I could actually watch my baby float around, and it was so detailed I could count that she had 10 fingers and 10 toes. And I'm watching a sampling rod go around and cut a piece of the placenta. And then they showed me what they took out of me, and it was this white spiky cloud. And what they were going to do was they were going to count chromosomes. For those who aren't aware, Down syndrome is the result of an additional chromosome. So I knew after 72 hours of this procedure that my baby did not have Down syndrome. But it didn't stop there. In fact, I'd have several trips down to Toronto. My 9-month pregnancy was a science experiment. It wasn't until my daughter was a year old that they took us into a room with a box of Kleenex on the table. And I remember that. And the geneticist comes in and he says, Alyssah has Noonan syndrome. You spell it Noonan. And like a human Wikipedia page begins to tell us what it is and what to expect. He was so thorough. And at the end of it, he says, do you have any questions? And both me and my husband are like, no. But I would go home and I would go on the internet and I would obsessively research. And what I can tell you is that people with Noonan syndrome, or children, they have unique facial characteristics. They are short statured, they're dwarf-like, they're proportionately small. 80 to 90% of them have a congenital heart defect. Some have physical limitations and some have mental delays. And as I'm looking at pictures on the internet, it hits me like a ton of bricks because my daughter doesn't look like my husband or I, and yet she looks like she could be these children's siblings. And then I go through a period of grief because I'm reading all sorts of like fear-mongering information like, will my child have a higher chance of cancer? Or will my child have a fatal congenital heart defect? Or will my child have a mental delay? And as vain as this may sound, is my baby as beautiful as every mother believes their child is? But my quest for answers didn't stop there. I decided to do 23andMe, which is a DNA testing platform. I wanted to know what my DNA said about me. Although it was proved that Alyssah's chromosome number 2 was missing a protein as what they would call a spontaneous mutation, I wanted to know what my DNA said about me. So I got a package in the mail, you spit in a tube, you send it off, and I get a report back to find out that I most likely had brown hair. I was 99% British and Irish, and that I probably didn't like the taste of cilantro. So apparently there's a trait that for some people it tastes like soap. But nothing to shed light on why my daughter was born with the most common syndrome you've never heard about. But that's okay, because the advancements in science never end, and I know that my DNA is going to be used for future research and development. And I am so thankful for this, because my daughter is 9, and she has been recently diagnosed with cherubism. Sounds angelic? It's not. My daughter attended the Northern Facial Cranial Program here in Sudbury on a Friday, and they booked her in for surgery in Toronto on a Tuesday. It was unreal to see a team of doctors flock to my child like a rock star, all because her rarity provides a unique learning opportunity for doctors. Cherubism, left untreated, will deform your face. And it was deforming her face. But a medical journal that was just published this February, unreal, they found the cure for it. So my daughter is taking 1 pill twice a day. It's unreal. But it's scary because she's a little girl, and I know we teach it's all beauty on the inside, but for a 9-year-old little girl, being pretty is important. Did you know that men and women pick their mates based on reproductive abilities and gene qualities? It's an unconscious desire to want to have beautiful and healthy children. I believe that the next struggle for my daughter, next hurdle, is going to be the stigma of having not 1 but 2 rare genetic disorders that could be passed down to her children. Although it is her choice, my daughter's reproductive rights are going to be debated and they will be questioned. And I know this because 9 years ago, I was offered genetic testing. And if I couldn't have kids and I needed a sperm donor or an egg surrogate, those people would have to be of perfect genetic health. Do you even notice the way we talk to pregnant women? Boy or girl? As long as it's healthy, right? When you go down a rabbit hole, the internet is the perfect rabbit hole. It is dark, it is fear-mongering, but if you go down it with just a little bit of information, you might meet people like Michael Phelps. Now, if you know him, he's the most decorated Olympian of all time. It is believed that he has Marfan syndrome. Marfan syndrome is the result of having longer arms, longer legs, hands, toes, longer torso. So if you notice, Michael Phelps has an unusually long torso. He has longer lungs. He's a natural-born swimmer. Or Elizabeth Taylor. Do you know that she had a genetic mutation which gave her a double set of eyelashes? She was the most sought-after actress in the 1950s. So can being genetically different be seen as a strength here? Before all this, about 9 years ago, if my children would have come home with somebody with a syndrome or a disease, I wouldn't have wanted that. In fact, I would have went to the internet, read a whole bunch of fear-mongering information, and I would have graded that person based on their DNA, just like a scorecard. And I did just that 9 years ago. And I feel a lot of guilt because I can't even imagine my life without my daughter. And if you meet her, she is unusually different. So beautiful. She's got the most striking eyes you will ever meet. And ironically, her syndrome is what makes her so beautiful. So when we think about DNA and the complexity of even saying it, but the science of it shouldn't suggest that having a genetic mutation is something that is wrong or undesirable. I know now that genetics should be looked as opportunities to find the hidden strengths in different human beings. Thank you so much.